For a while now, it's been on my mind to speak to the idea of natural health protocols, lifestyle, and how it has the potential to actually cause difficulty within your life, pain, suffering, problems within your life. And this idea came to me, paying attention to more and more people that while they profess to be on a spiritual path, while they profess to have a deep, abiding interest in living a natural, healthy life, they just always seem to have something going wrong, or there was always some health issue they had to deal with. And I understand that sometimes our lives are just a little more troublesome and problematic than others, but there was a tendency, a theme, a habit behind this. And this finally came to my awareness to speak to after I worked with a client who had been suffering terribly for a couple of years, and the whole while having a deep fear of what they were suffering from as being cancer, an extreme fear of it. And I worked with this individual, and I did it astrologically, because as you know, my profession is as an astrologer. And I looked at the chart, and I just didn't see this overwhelming problem that they had been afraid of for all these years. But they had finally written to me, and actually it had taken a long time to get the session, because I have a long waiting list. Last time I checked, there were over 200 people on my waiting list. So it takes a long time for people to get in to work with me. And I felt bad about this after I got to their chart, because they had been suffering again for such a long time. But I looked at their chart, and I saw not a serious issue like they were afraid of, but I did see that now was the time for them to attend to this. And I did see that the path most appropriate for them was actually going to a normal allopathic, or some people call it mechanistic doctor. And they were averse to that. And I told them, I said, look, whatever it is, you need to get a significant, specific diagnostic test to find out so that you can handle this right now. And I had an idea that they were going to find out that it wasn't much of anything. And they gave me all the lists of the natural things they'd been doing, the homeopathy, the supplements, the juicing, the vegetarianism, all these things. And I said, just go to the doctor and get it checked out. And they were averse to it. And finally they did. They wrote back not a few days later and said, I'm so glad that we had this talk, because I had been afraid for years that this was cancer. It had troubled my family. We put a lot of things on hold that we wanted to do because we didn't know what was going on, what our future was like. And we found out it was just something simple, easily curable with just a short medication regimen. And they said, I'm so thankful just for the simple fact, not that it wasn't anything serious, I'm thankful for that too, but now we don't have to worry about that anymore. So after I had this experience, I started paying attention to more and more people who go through their lives afraid of everything, afraid of gluten, afraid of pesticides, afraid of not eating an organic apple, afraid of accidentally smelling an exhaust fume or something of this nature. Now, given there are some very real things that we need to avoid to protect our health, but our body is extremely resilient. And the reason I have this idea, this sense that natural health protocols and lifestyles can be running your life is because we become obsessed with them. We think that we're doing wrong by going to a normal doctor from time to time, when that could save our lives. We can try to follow all these natural health protocols, and sometimes they work great, but other times they don't work at all. And we have to remember that there is a time and a place for everything. If you have a serious life-threatening illness, you can try to do it all naturally, but I've known at least 2 people who've tried that, and they're not with us anymore. I've known people who have lived a natural, healthy life, and an issue arose that they thought that they had been planning for their entire life by taking care of themselves, and it just came out of nowhere. So they went to a typical normal medical doctor. They had it taken care of, and then once they were well, they could return back to their natural lifestyle, nourishing their body through whatever kind of foods they find most important. and they can continue to live in that regard. So what we really need to do is essentially develop a balance between the two. There's absolutely nothing wrong with normal medical doctors, mechanistic medicine. Something goes wrong that needs to be corrected, just correct it and move on, and then you can figure out later what kind of homeopathic or Bach flower essence remedy you need to take to protect yourself in the future from that difficulty. But if you live your life as well, being afraid of eating certain things, being afraid of what's going on in the world, the fear you are generating is more poisonous than the thing you are actually ingesting. You have to remember that. Many people don't take care of themselves at all. They live into their 80s and their 90s. They have a full life. They're just fine. Other people, they try to do everything naturally. They stress out about it. They get all upset and worked up if someone doesn't have a water filter and gets the fluoride out of their water, and they live their whole life with this unconscious subliminal fear. And that manifests in stress in relationships. Now, you can't be with anyone who doesn't have the same idealism you do. That manifests in underlying continued weakness of the body, because the body is always in a subtle state of fear of, oh, what's going to hurt me next? So what we have to do is approach this in a very balanced fashion. And we have to learn to realize that our body is strong, that our body can be well, that our body can handle a heck of a lot. And that we're not here to worry about our health all our life. We're here to live. In the same way that when I talk about people who are obsessed with fitness and exercise, you don't go to the gym all day long just so you can keep going to the gym all day long. You do it so that you can enjoy your family, so that you can go for walks, so that you can be relatively pain-free. This is why we exercise. This is why we take care of ourselves, not so we can obsess about it day in and day out, because that creates just a constant, static field of worry. Oh, is it the Wi-Fi signals that are hurting my brain? Is it the chlorine smell from the pool I just walked by? Oh my goodness, I was changing my oil in the car and I got a little bit of oil on my hands. I got to go do some kind of remedy to detox petrochemicals. You got to give your body credit. You got to give God credit. And this brings me to my other point. Well, first of all, let me say, if you want some interesting insights into how this works, get the book, and I'll put a little link at the bottom of this talk to it, Anita Moorjani's book, Dying to Be Me. It's about a woman who developed a lymphoma, and for 4 years she tried to do everything natural, and it got worse and it got worse and it got worse until the point that she was so bad that she almost died. I mean, it was in seconds of dying. She had a near-death experience. That's what this book is about. And in that near-death experience, she realized so many things. That the thing that made her sick was her fear of being alive, in the sense of she would be afraid of eating that food. She tried to eat all organic. She tried to exercise in a certain way. She did Ayurveda. She did all different kinds of energy medicine because she had a fear of all the poisons that she imagined was in the world. And she didn't want to go to a normal doctor because she had a fear of chemotherapy and so on. And she went through this process and she died, essentially. But then during the near-death experience, she realized that life is so much stronger than we give it credit for. That it was her fear that caused the weakness within her body. That it was her fear that caused her to have the problems that she did. And once she had this awareness, and again, I'll put a link and you can read the book. There's also a nice TED Talk that she did. Once she had the realization, she came back, and within 3 days, many of the tumors in her body, I believe they didn't disappear, but they went down, they shrunk somewhere between 25 to 70% within 3 days. And as time went on, in a very short period of time, she became well again because she knew what the source of well-being was. And that part of the thing that was causing her difficulty was all the fear she carried around about life and eating the right foods and doing everything naturally and all these sorts of things. And even when she came back, the doctors still wanted to give her chemotherapy drugs. And she knew at that point, it didn't matter whether someone gave her chemotherapy drugs or not, that she was well. And so whereas before, whenever she saw that bag of chemotherapy, she just had poison in her mind, and it made her subtly afraid and confused, which can cause more disease. She saw it just as something her body was doing, and it wasn't going to affect her in an adverse fashion. And there's another book I'll put down at the bottom of this post called, what is it? think it's called You Are the Placebo by Joe Dispenza. And he talks about this, about how our ideas affect how we live our life. So whatever food you get, it's nourishing, it's God, it's power, it's love. Of course, you don't want to drink Clorox, right? There's some things that only extreme yogis can do. But in our world, well, maybe all we're meant to do is just eat a normal apple that's not organic and realize it's not going to poison us. To go for a ride with our beloved, with the top down, and get behind a truck that spews exhaust fumes and realize that 20 seconds of being behind that truck is not going to poison your body. You're going to be fine. Enjoy the day. Enjoy the love of being with your partner on a joy ride in the mountains. So consider that book. Number one, You Are the Placebo, and then the other book by Anita Moorjani, Dying to Be Me, to get some insights into why I'm speaking about this. Even myself, I've experimented with telling myself that something was extremely bad for me and how it made me sick afterwards, and then experimenting with, just eating normal standard American diet and saying this is just the most wonderful, nourishing thing for my body, and it didn't affect me one way or the other. So your mind is extremely powerful. And as yogis, as spiritual people, we need to realize that. And so the point I want to get at, I had a conversation with someone I know, and we'll consider this person a friend, although I don't really hang out with them that much. But I brought up this point, and I think they might have taken offense to it. And they said, well, but if everything's God, then what's it matter? And I said, look, you can't serve two masters. You can't say on one hand, I'm not going to eat this thing because it's going to poison my body. But on the other hand, say that God is everything, so why worry about it? Well, if God is everything, so why worry about it? Well, God is everything, so why worry about it? And we have to realize that our well-being is not based on the chemicals. Our well-being is not based on these individual things. Our well-being is based on divine power, God, intelligence. And not all of us know that, which is why we have to learn to contemplate this thing, get a direct sense of it. Our immune system is not based on simply the fact that we're around someone who has a cold. It's based on something more powerful, an intelligence beyond just a T cell, although T cell plays a role in this whole thing. So we have to realize that the source of our well-being does not come from toxins, nor does it come from carrots, nor does it come from spinach. It comes from our understanding of life. It comes from an intelligence beyond our mind, and that we have to learn to tap into that intelligence. And it may be that we find that, hey, it's okay to eat fried chicken on Sundays with my grandparents because I'm having a loving interaction with them. Just as it's okay to go hang out with my buddy in Colorado who just likes to eat juice all day or drink juice all day, but you're not doing it out of fear. You're not bringing a sense of fear when you eat the fried chicken. You're not developing a great sense of pride just because you're juicing with your best buddy. You're just doing it out of love because you're spending time with those you love. And there are certain things that, of course, you may want to avoid. You're not going to want to go inhale toxic fumes 24 hours a day. But the body has an extreme resilience. And the more that you can just simply take care of yourself by eating nutritious foods as often as possible, by getting sunlight, exercise as often as possible, more importantly, meditating regularly to clear the mind, to recognize when you see and feel and experience a deep sense of fear and dread because you give your power away to something physical. You need to be aware of that and realize that God is really the animating force of all things. And that if you have a trust and faith and you can follow that inner guidance of your heart and you're not making choices out of fear or compulsion, that's the key there, you're probably going to be all right. But the hard thing is that most of us don't have any understanding of peacefulness inside, and all we know is fear and compulsion because our parents have told us that we shouldn't eat this, that we should eat that. It's like people who go to a medical doctor, but all their friends tell them that they really should be doing acupuncture and juicing. And so instead of getting the benefit of that medical doctor, they've got that fear in the back of their mind saying you're doing something wrong, so it might not work as well. In the same way, those people who go to an acupuncturist or do juicing, but in the back of their mind, they really truly have this sense that they should go to a normal doctor. the person is not coherent, they're not committed to a particular path of healing. And God, divine consciousness can lead you to that, but it requires that you have a sense of inner knowing about what that is. And what do I mean by that? Well, the clearer you are, you can start to get a sense of what is right and what is wrong for you. And it may be that something comes up in your life and you turn within and you're completely peaceful. Now, if you have any sense of aversion or fear or compulsion, you might not get the best information here. That's why you have to develop your meditation practice so that you can access that state of calm and clarity and peace. So you know what it's like to be at peace, so you know how to get the proper information. And then you have an issue and you ask yourself, okay, well, I think maybe I should go to a doctor, a medical doctor. And you have the inner knowing, yeah, that's the right thing to do. And so you don't listen to anyone else. You just go to the medical doctor, you take the pills, you get over it, you move on with your life. You don't obsess about it. You don't think about how you've poisoned your body by taking antibiotics and now you're contributing to superbugs all over the world. That's just generating more fear. Or maybe you're at the doctor's office and they're giving you information. You're thinking, this just doesn't quite feel right. It doesn't quite feel as though it's accurate for me. And you contemplate, maybe I should explore other things, such as juicing or acupuncture, whatever it might be. And maybe you do have a deep sense of, yeah, that's the way to go. And you go that way and you find that it works for you. But the key is that at the end of the day, you have to be able to access that state of clarity, and you have to be able to commit to the path that you know is actually accurate and true for you. And that's the hard part, because there's so much conflicting information out there. Even if you went to different doctors or different natural healthcare practitioners, if you go to 5 different natural healthcare practitioners, all 5 of them might say different things depending on their preference. One might say, you need to take more Bach flower essences. The other one might say, no, that's totally wrong for you. You need a gemstone. The other one might say, you need acupuncture. The other might say, no, chiropractic is the best way to go. Again, that's setting you up for a lack of coherence, and you're not going to make a good choice because you're listening to what everyone else is saying. And maybe you'll get lucky. Many people do, and they just pick one, go with it, and it works out great. But the overall issue here is learning to realize, what is the source of well-being? What is the source of well-being? How can you learn to meditate, pray even, to a point of being calm and clear inside, to where you know what's right for you, and then learning to trust and follow that instinct. And it may be that leads you down a route that you learn that wasn't the way to go. But you say, all right, I learned something here, so let's try again. And you keep trying until you get it. You keep trying until you get it, but you don't necessarily cut out the possibility of any kind of help. Because if God is everything, then God can help you in various different ways. You can look at something as poison. You can look at something as the fact that you actually have food. People say, oh, I would never eat that because it is poisonous. But there are people all over the world that would probably die to have any kind of food. In fact, they die every day because they don't have any food. So we need to be realistic about it. And we need to realize that there are examples of yogis and spiritual people who have ingested poisonous things and have lived and survived and been just fine. And that's not to say that you try to do that. That's just demonstrating the power of God. And that's what we really need to understand here, is that the power of God is what's behind all healing processes. And if for you that is modern medicine, so be it. If for you it is natural medicine, so be it. And it may be that at different points in your life, it is different things. But you can't judge anyone else by their path. If someone doesn't have a water filter that gets out fluoride in every little particle you can imagine, that doesn't mean you go in and start talking about how bad it is for them, because then you're just creating more fear for them. Maybe it's not ever going to affect them, right? So we need to keep this in mind. Your choice is your choice. If you want to live a certain way, that's up to you. But you don't want to ruin your relationships with your family, with your friends, by thinking that you know everything just because you've chosen a certain line of dogma and indoctrination that's more based on fear than actual inner knowing. Because for some people, eating Ben & Jerry's ice cream can be the most wonderful thing in the world, the most nourishing thing in the world. For other people, it could totally put them into diabetic seizures. I don't know if they're diabetic seizures, I just made that up. That's what popped into my head. But everyone's going to be different in this regard. And we have to learn to respect all our paths, but mostly we have to learn to be able to know what is true for ourselves, and know that on one hand, you can't say, I'm not going to a medical doctor because science doesn't know everything. And on the other hand, say, but there's this study that says that this particular food that I like to eat now is poisoned by certain pesticides and GMOs, so I can't eat it. Do you see the problem in that? On one hand, you're saying science doesn't know everything, so don't trust science, don't trust modern medicine. On the other hand, you're saying, oh, but science said this, and I'm going to trust that part of science. So what is it? Is it that God is your power, is your source, will guide you appropriately? Or is it that science is the thing that rules your life and you want to avoid it at all costs? And even so much so that you continue to use science to make you fear everything else in your life. Science and God are one thing, but our mind chops it up and makes us choose certain aspects of science that we think are better than others, but really it's just causing more confusion. So you can't say modern medicine is bad, and then on the other hand, use studies that are employed by the same principles of modern medicine and say, see, this is bad. Because if modern medicine is bad, why are you trusting something that is running on the same paradigm as modern medicine? It's a tricky thing, and it's not easy at all. It can be. It just takes a lot of focus on paying attention to your own body, truly. If you are so caught up and neurotic about health, you may need help. You may need someone to help you sort through that, because otherwise you're just going to keep spinning your wheels in kind of an insane fashion, causing more and more problems for yourself and others. And you may need someone to kind of shake you out of it, and you actually have to trust them that they can do that for you. Obviously, hopefully someone who's also healthy, first of all. So no matter, excuse me, no matter who you're choosing, make sure that your guide in this process is someone who actually demonstrates health, good health. Because they may say, go to a doctor sometimes, get acupuncture other times. This is how I do it. It's okay to drink milk every now and then, whatever it might be. We can make all kinds of stuff up here. But you need to realize that if you're making yourself and others miserable by your obsession with natural medicine and natural health care, you might need to talk to someone who has a more balanced life and actually enjoys living life rather than thinking about these problems all the time.